I think we can start. So, are we ready, our speakers?
Yes.
Good. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome all to our phishing outbreaks in 2022 webinar organized by ENISA and APWG European Foundation. Today I'm happy because we have been collaborating with ENISA for many years, especially when it comes time for the European Cybersecurity Month. My name is Zariana Dmitrishina. I work for APWG and I'm pleased to moderate this session today. Right now I would like to share our going to cover today and some housekeeping. Well, first our speakers will have the floor for their presentations. Afterwards, we'll open a discussion on phishing tendencies in 2022. And well, afterwards, we'll also like to encourage you, the audience, for some questions. We do encourage you to use our chat box that you can see in the right corner on your screen for your comments and questions. In that way, we'll make this webinar more interactive and interesting for you. And also we could learn something new from each other. Well, I would like to mention that today we have a wide variety of participants from around the world, tech, non-tech professionals from LIAS, academia, and various industries and other fields. And also I would like to emphasize that today we have more than 330 registration for this webinar. And we welcome you. We do hope that you enjoy this session today. Well, so this afternoon, we will discuss the latest changes in overall cybersecurity and precisely phishing-related cybercrime that we have observed in 2022, and what options do we have to prevent and respond to those phishing attacks. Our speakers will discuss the criminal tactics and explore what we should do, how to respond to them. Also, we will discuss and explore some possible tools needed to effectively combat cybercrimes, precisely phishing-related attacks, how to detect and how to stop them. So we are delighted to have three prominent professionals in the field, our three speakers, and I'm happy to present them. Well, please welcome Evgenia Leya. She is Cybersecurity Officer from ENISA. Then Eleni Tekmejoglu. I'm sorry, I hope I have said it right. She's a Secretary National Expert from ENISA, and my colleague Foy Shiver from APWG is a Deputy Secretary General. So now let's turn it over to our speakers. So Eleni and Evgenia, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I will start first. So yeah, I'm Eleni Tekmejoglu. I work for ENISA with the Market Certification and Standardization Unit. And I'm also contributing for the Knowledge and the Information team. Part of my responsibilities is the delivery of the threat landscape work and reports at ENISA. I will start sharing the slide that we have prepared for you today. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, super. So I would also like to welcome you today to this webinar. Together with Iphigenia, we are happy to talk about the latest trends with regards to phishing, as they have been captured through our intensive work at ENISA, monitoring and delivering threat landscapes. So we will kick off the conversation to talk about the ENISA threat landscape work and the relevant reports. But we'll also take the opportunity to say a few things about the ENISA threat landscape methodology that we published in July. Then we will continue to discuss about the major trends and tactics used by threat actors that have been observed during the last couple of years in light of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. I would like to start by saying a few things about ENISA and its role, even though I'm conscious that most of you are aware of its work in one shape or form. So ENISA was established 18 years ago, and it is the union's agency dedicated to achieving a high common level of cybersecurity across Europe. In a nutshell, the agency works together with its key stakeholders to strengthen trust in the connected economy, to boost the resilience of the union's infrastructure, and to keep Europe's society and citizens digitally secure. And how we do that? As you can see on the slide, starting from the bottom left corner of the diagram, ENISA contributes to EU cybersecurity policy. It enhances the trustworthiness of ICT products, services, and processes with cybersecurity certification schemes. It builds capacity and raises awareness through knowledge sharing. And cooperates with member states and EU bodies and helps Europe prepare for the cyber challenges of tomorrow. So ENISA has a long track record of carrying out threat analysis and developing threat landscapes. Throughout the years, we have developed numerous horizontal, thematic, and sectorial threat landscapes over the last 10 years with great support from the cybersecurity community. This work has been continuous and joined up, bringing together insights from industry experts, from academia, from other European institutes, from OSINT, and also from ENISA's situational awareness activities. What the ETL is about? Well, the ETL provides, as we call it ETL, the ENISA threat landscape, it provides an overview of observed threats during a reporting period. It has components both at the strategic level, but also technical level. And it reflects on the past. So it has a retroactive nature, I would say, to prepare for the future. The ETL has become a flagship activity, and this year's report actually marks an important anniversary, as it is the 10th edition, and it was accompanied by the publication of the ENISA Cyber Threat Landscape Methodology. So, from our extensive work on threat landscapes, as I said, we have built knowledge on how to approach the development of threat landscapes. We have collected quite a lot of experience. We have got lessons learned and turned all this information into a methodology. The methodology, as I said, it came out in July. It is aimed for policymakers, for risk managers, for information security practitioners who are supporting threat awareness and monitoring. And basically, it is about offering good practice guidance on delivering threat landscapes. With this methodology, actually, the characteristics that we try to incorporate in this methodology is that we wanted it to be adaptable to different needs and types of threat landscapes, to be easy to adapt, so we are avoiding a high degree of prescription. To be flexible, actually, it was also validated by subject matter experts. And the methodology, it is open to all. It is public on the ENISA website. So all these characteristics underpin the principles and aims of actionable and timely cyber threat landscapes. In this slide, very quickly, this slide provides the end-to-end process of the methodology, which comprises of 6 core components, the 5 steps that you can see on the slide, and ongoing feedback right below, which is the mechanism to improve the methodology. So the methodology sets out in a structured way the approach on how to on what to consider basically with regards to each of these steps. And I would like to point out that all steps of the methodology are equally important for the success of the final output. Also, I would like to highlight the fact that the direction and the collection steps that you see as the first steps of this methodology, these are the planning activities. And I would like to point out how important it is to invest enough effort and time in this, because usually they are underestimated when delivering threat landscapes. However, these are equally important throughout this process in order to produce a meaningful threat landscape. So, the ENISA threat landscape report that we publish in an annual basis is a horizontal threat landscape. This report presents the status of the cybersecurity threat landscape, and this is done by identifying prime threats during the reporting period. The major trends that we have observed with respect to the threats, trends with regards to the threat actors and the attack techniques that they are employing, and how they go about delivering their attacks. And finally, it also describes relevant mitigation measures. So on this slide, you can see the report that was last published. It was published in October. You can find it on the ENISA website. Currently, we're working on this year's annual report. The report is expected to come out end of October, beginning of November. It will be the 10th edition of the ENISA Threat Landscape Report. This year, again, we have looked at the global landscape, but we always place priority on European Union incidents. So what we have noticed, this year again, we have noticed a big increase, not only in terms of vector and numbers of incidents, but also in terms of their impact. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, played a very important role in this, and generally the geopolitical landscape, the war in Ukraine, everything had an impact on the cybersecurity threat landscape as expected. Okay, so on the slide you can see the prime threats that we have identified. Again, we see the supply chain attacks is a big trend, and it's here to stay, and it is expected to grow further. With this model and approach of compromise one to compromise many, nobody, no organization can feel safe even if their own defenses are good. Then we have misinformation and disinformation attacks, which are we find them quite often among the preparatory activities at the basis of other attacks. And these kind of threats are often used with other cybersecurity threats, leading to hybrid threats, as we call them, which are cyber attacks that involve more than just a single threat vector. Then again, okay, ransomware, sorry, we saw a shift from double or triple extortion to multiple extortion. The use of ransomware as a service platforms during attacks has become the new norm. So, again this year with ETL in ETL 2022, we have a dedicated chapter for analyzing the threat actors. Understanding, of course, the trends related to threat actors is crucial for planning cybersecurity defenses and preparing mitigation strategies. The 4 types of threat actors that we have considered are state-sponsored actors. Again, the COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine drove cyber espionage. We saw highly sophisticated and impactful supply chain compromises by state-backed groups. We also saw cyber criminals exploiting the work-from-home technologies due again to the pandemic, and taking advantage of the COVID-19 and all its variants that are coming up. We saw a rise of the hacker as a service model. Basically, it gave the opportunity for less technical actors to gain access to more specialized and sophisticated skills. And finally, hacktivists are always present. They're always taking advantage of the geopolitical conditions and the situations, and they're using them in their campaigns. So, as I said, in this report, this year's report, we have analyzed, among the other threats, the social engineering. Social engineering encompasses a broad range of activities that attempt to exploit a human error or a human behavior with the objective of gaining access to information or services. The success of social engineering techniques, of course, relies heavily on the human factor, apart from abusing the technology. So with social engineering, users are trapped in opening documents, in opening emails, files, or visit websites, or even grant unauthorized persons access to systems or services. This threat canvas, I would say it consists mainly of the following vectors. It consists of phishing. Here we see phishing. We see all kinds of phishing: spear phishing, whaling, smishing, phishing, business email compromise. So all these are vectors that we see when we're talking about social engineering. So now I think I will hand over to Iphigenia to take you through the specific trends we have observed with regards to phishing. So Iphigenia.
Hello, good afternoon from my side. I'm also a colleague of Eleni Tsekmezoglu. I'm from ENISA. I have been part of ENISA from 2016, and from 2021, I took over, let's say, the project management of the threat landscape activity in ENISA. So, for the trends that we observed this year in phishing, we can say for sure that threat actors actually use whatever is more relevant in the global landscape to get the victims to press that malicious attachment, link, whatever it is they're trying actually to get the payload downloaded. In 2021, this was centered around COVID-19, which we saw as the main lure in phishing campaigns. 2022, due to the geopolitical situation that occurred between Russia and Ukraine, the threat actors actually switched lures, and this became the main lure to be used in the phishing campaigns. Eleni, next slide, please.
Mhm.
You're going to be hearing this a lot from me this time. So, multi-factor authentication has actually reduced the opportunities for attackers to use and compromise the accounts, and to use this as a starting point for their social engineering or phishing campaigns. So instead of targeting individual mailboxes, what they have done, they have shifted to the abuse of legitimate infrastructure to execute their campaigns. So they have started actually using phishing from known accounts. Another technique that we saw this year, which is quite clever in my opinion, was the sending of a non-malicious email and then followed by a malicious one. So the initial email that the attacker is impersonating someone that is working at the targeted organization did not contain a malicious company. When though the victim replied, and the reply was sent actually to the compromised account instead of the actual organization, then well, that was the trigger that the threat actor sent the malicious, the follow-up email that contained the malicious attachment. In this case that we saw, it was actually a disk image, which led, among other things, to the Cobalt Strike beacon. Next slide, please. Right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
it okay. So
Another thing, we started seeing it from last year, but I think it has become more prevalent this year, is another phishing in the whole vocabulary of the phishing attack vectors, QR phishing, which is not something new. So what is going on? Criminals basically are using QR codes to redirect the victims to the malicious websites, and then they go and steal login and financial information. This is very important to realize that these type of scams can happen both in the digital space as well in the physical realm. And this trend, okay, of abusing the QR codes for phishing probably will further continue, especially considering that QR codes have become quite normal in this time and period. And they're also quite hard to identify if they're malicious or not. In the URL, in general, you can distinguish it if it's a malicious URL due to the words that are written on it. But try to distinguish if this is a malicious QR code. Not most of us can. I think nobody, except if you go and scan it. Next slide, Eleni. Then we go to smishing and vishing, which actually have increased since a lot of the users don't actually expect to get an SMS and for that SMS to contain something malicious, or to actually get a phone call that is actually a malicious phone call. In one of these cases, Flubot, which basically targets Android devices, we saw that in most of the EU countries, and is spread either via SMS or MMS, where victims first receive an SMS, and that it could impersonate basically a lot of things: parcel delivery companies, voicemail, memos, or even fake software. But that message actually contains a link that points to a website, instructing, of course, the victim to install the relevant app. This was actually the case for both the Predator and the Pegasus spyware that was first seen last year, and okay, Predator was seen this year. I don't know if a lot of you know. We had actually the Predator incident that became quite viral here in Europe, in the country that we live in as well, Greece. And for the phishing, we saw the safe account scams, which is an emerging modus operandi in the phishing place. In such a scam, attackers basically convince the victims into transferring funds to a safe account by telling them that their bank account is compromised. Next slide, Eleni. BEC, or the business email, has also increased and has grown in sophistication, and it also has become more targeted. Because one of the reasons for this popularity is that instead of having to go through all of the trouble of the multi-stage attacks, finding their way into an unknown environment, threat actors basically can just ask the victims to execute a financial transaction or something like that, depending on their objectives. And yes, we do consider BEC as phishing, even though it does not rely on malware or a malicious link, but it relies on abusing trust, impersonation, and other social engineering techniques. And compared to the previous years, as I mentioned, they have further increased substantially. Next slide, please. Another as a service model. Okay, so we have seen ransomware as a service, we have seen disinformation as a service last year, and it grew. We saw phishing as a service. This whole as a service has grown exponentially, I would say. So they're not new, as I mentioned, but with all of the as a service models, they have grown in sophistication. They have adopted a professional business model because why not? They can. And of course, they have automated services. Because of the low cost of this and the relative ease of how these campaigns can be deployed, it is not very likely that this will end. They will continue and probably grow. And of course, we saw a sequel to this, the initial access broker. So phishing as a service was such a big hit that, okay, they took it to another level. In this, basically, the social engineering specialists open the floodgates of an organization. And then with this initial access, they actually hand it over to potential buyers in order for those buyers actually to continue with their operations. Next slide, please. So also I would like to present a little bit of the major instance that we saw during this year. So one of the most interesting, I would say, was a spear phishing campaign that was conducted by the Dukes or APT21 or Cosbear or Nobelium. Okay, there are different names from the different vendors that actually tracked this activity group. It was first discovered in the October and November of 2021. What this espionage group did was actually target various European diplomatic missions and ministries of foreign affairs with approaches similar as the earlier campaigns that were targeting French organizations, and they impersonated other government agencies and persuaded victims to open an HTML file, which basically downloaded a disk image. And within the disk, okay, the attackers stored further malware, and it led to a very well-known malware, actually, in this case, the Cobalt Strike beacon. Another interesting case that we had was in November 2021, where IKEA email system actually were hit. There, the threat actors were actually targeting employees with an internal phishing attacks using stolen reply chain emails. So a reply chain attack is when basically the threat actors steal a legitimate corporate email and then reply to them with links and malicious documents that install malware on the devices. Next slide, Eleni. One other interesting code in regards to the trend of QRising was a phishing campaign that was using QR codes and was targeting German banking users. It happened in December 2021. Actually, their goal was to gain, to steal basically banking information from those financial institutions. And lastly, okay, we have seen multiple activity groups that have capitalized on the conflict that is happening, and they're distributing malware. Three, okay, at least advanced persistent groups. This happened in mid-March, and they're using the ongoing conflict as a lure, basically to distribute the malware and steal sensitive information. And yes, good, Eleni. Yes, next slide. Now, in regards to malware and ransomware, in the previous years, we saw that the use of remote desktop vulnerabilities was used as the initial foothold in the organization. And then they went and deployed the payload, malware, ransomware, whatever it was they wanted to do. This year, this has shifted, most likely since cybersecurity is becoming the normal. Everybody has at least some kind of baseline measures, defenses, which is good. Don't get me wrong. So what leaves to the threat actors? Well, they're going back to phishing. And what you can see actually this shift in the diagram, okay? This diagram is produced by data that ENISA has gathered and analyzed. Okay, it's not the full global picture. It is mostly instance on EU member states, and we can never actually have the real number of instances due to instance not being shared or not communicated or not enough information. But at least this gives an indication how things have shifted towards phishing. And lastly, I would like to finish our presentation. Yes, okay, with some recommendations. Yes, it's actually a repetition of one of things that you might have heard, but repetition is it's always something good. It gives you the opportunity to actually learn. So one of the first recommendations that I would give is training, and more training. Why? Because in a lot of cases, the user is the initial point of access. It's where they would first send the phishing email. It's who needs, okay, the one that needs actually to see if this is from a legitimate source or a malicious source. Under the training, we should always check, double check, maybe even triple check, or quadruple check the senders, the domains, the URLs, the websites, if there are some typos or they are written in weird ways, the registration forms, the emails, all of these things that might prove that the user is legitimate or not. We should always use, not only in our business environment, but also in our personal space and accounts, multi-factor authentication. As I mentioned before, this works. It has done its job. It does its job. It protects in a lot of cases from threat actors actually compromising our legitimate accounts and then using them for other purposes. And then, okay, we go to the more technical stuff that needs to be installed in one organization: spam filters, content filter, the email gateway. Again, on the organization level, it's a good thing to implement a need-to-know access policy and to limit the impact of any compromise, if and when it happens. And of course, to disable any automatic execution of code, macros, graphics, preloading mail links at the email clients, and update them frequently. So that was it from my side as well. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Evgenia. Thank you very much, Eleni, for your illuminating and interesting information. And right now, we would like to hear from Corey. So what do you have to tell us?
Good morning. Let me get my
Good morning.
presentation. Oh, it was volume's on, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Actually, I'm on the other side of the pond, so it's a little earlier here. I'm going to get my presentation loaded. There we go. You got that? Excellent. Again, good morning, good afternoon. My name again is Foy Shiver, Deputy Secretary General with the APWG. I'm going to spend some time, just a brief overview of APWG and what we do for those of you that are not familiar with the organization, and then talk a little bit about our latest trends report that overviews phishing activity on the internet. So who are we? The APWG, the Anti-Phishing Working Group, as we were founded, got together in 2003 with a collection of about a dozen different global banks who were looking at this new threat to their industry called phishing. So generally what we did is we started we're a nonprofit organization. We're not a charity. We're considered a technology consortium. So our members are a collection from the financial institution, technology companies, ISPs, CERT organizations. It's a mixed bag of vetted cybercrime fighters. And we share information to help fight phishing and all types of fraud, and at this point, crime in general on the internet. So when we were initially founded, everything we were looking at was phishing, but as cybercrime has evolved, so has the APWG. So we have several areas we call our spheres of influence. So we do get involved in cyber policy. We work a lot with ICANN, the EU government, US government, pretty much globally as recommendations for policy that will help protect end users from crime and hopefully not help the criminals commit their acts. We do a lot of work with education and user awareness. If you've ever seen the Stop, Think, Connect campaign, that's one of our global programs to help educate end users on how to be safer on the internet. We work with a lot of research. So we do a lot of research grants. We work with a lot of universities globally to promote research around cybercrime. And then one of our biggest roles as the APWG is sharing threat data. And we'll talk a little more in detail about our e-crime exchange in a few minutes. And then lastly, I'll follow up with looking at our tracking and trends, where we track malicious activity on the internet. So just to cover some of these main areas, our spheres. So the e-crime research program, we've got a couple of different things going on. Our biggest one that we've been running since 2006 is our annual symposium on electronic crime research. So this is a peer-reviewed research program. Industry and universities globally present their work. It's peer-reviewed, and the accepted papers we publish through the IEEE. At this point, I need to go count again. We're over 160 research papers that we have published specifically related to cybercrime. At the end, I'll show you our latest event will be the November 30th and December 1st and 2nd. So stay tuned for registration, and the papers will be published soon about that. As well, we run we get involved in a lot of research programs because one, we have a lot of data and we have a good vetted community of experts. We just finished up through our EU foundation that Zoriana helps run over there, our low card. So this was collecting law enforcement evidence and a platform using blockchain technology to track evidence for cybercrime. And now we just started up a new project, the Lazarus. You can read in detail on our website. Oops, watch what you click. And this is bringing a holistic platform to address security and performance issues with AI and other projects. So go check that out on the website for more details. I'm not nearly technical enough to go into the details for that. Kind of the meat of what APWG does, we consider ourselves within our members kind of like a clearinghouse or a distribution center. So as APWG, we maintain our e-crime exchange. So this is a service provided to our members. And the mission of ECX is mixed to, one, provide a best-in-class data sharing framework. So here's an environment where our members can share data securely amongst themselves. We limit access to the e-crime exchange to our members. So everyone participating has been vetted by us. We have a data sharing agreement with each one to maintain the data and the quality of the data that comes in. We handle several different types of data currently. We share phishing URLs, which is our most popular module, malicious domains, malicious IP addresses. We also share phishing emails themselves. So anyone can submit a phishing email to report phishing at apwg.org. We maintain those, and our members then process them to find new phishing URLs to go into the other modules. As well, this particular module is really popular among our researchers. So as they develop machine learning and new AI technologies, or a new algorithm to try and identify malicious emails, we have a big collection of data that they can use for that training. All of the data is real time. If a member finds a new URL to a phishing page, or maybe we detect a false positive, it does happen occasionally. Once it's reported, all the other members will see it the next time they view the data. And the way we run the system is we're not trying to enforce any business rules. Every one of our members has their own targets, their own products, and we try to fit in the middle through a REST-based API that they can then use to push and pull the data as needed. And we often get, you can't share data amongst, law enforcement, government, industry, and do it well. We've been doing it over 17 years quite successfully. So there you go. So now I'm going to go in a little bit to talk about the trends report and some of the details for the latest one. But again, so this is another one of the things we've been doing for a very long time now. So just looking at data and figuring out the statistics to look at phishing and crime and how those trends flow. So we started this in 2004. Initially, it was a monthly report. After a few years, our members, our steering committee got together and we decided to go quarterly to give us a little more time to look at the data and get a better analysis of what's going on out there. And so what we see is a really an in-depth review of phishing on the net. So the latest report just came out, I believe it was last month, just a few weeks ago. And some of the highlights you'll see, the report is available on our website. You can download the full report to get more details than I'll cover here. But in the second quarter, we hit a new total phishing attacks of a little over 1 million attacks for the quarter, unique attacks. One of the big things we've seen is that the amount of requested for BEC attacks, which are very successful, right up there with ransomware, was up to over $100,000, $109,000 roughly, compared to just over 90,000 for Q1. We see an increase in attacks on healthcare and transportation as far as ransomware is concerned in Q2. Social media continues to rise. I think this is on another slide later on, actually, that 47% increase Q1 over Q2 on social media attacks. And the other thing we're really starting to see, I think Gina mentioned earlier, was the increase in mobile phone-based fraud, smishing and phishing, increasing dramatically in Q2, and we fully anticipate that to increase. The QR phishing that she mentioned a few minutes ago, the numbers haven't quite gotten high enough to show up, but we do see that one going through the ceiling as well. So just to walk through some of the highlights here that we saw in Q2. Reported phishing has quadrupled since the pandemic hit. So in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of phishing attacks, and that's unique attacks. You know, one attack may have multiple targets and multiple phishing pages. This is looking at the totals that are out there once we digest that. Brands. The brands have kind of dropped down a little bit over our peak last year, but it still tends to be pretty consistent. Anywhere from the 600 to 700 different major brands that we see being targeted by phishing campaigns. As always, the financial sector tends to be the biggest hit. As far as phishing, seems pretty obvious. They've got the money, right? But we are seeing, as we mentioned earlier, a 70% increase in mobile phone-based fraud, Q1 over Q2. That's just in 3 months. Ransomware, also a very successful mode of criminals taking money from people. So a couple of slides here, you'll see that one figure we saw here, if you look at the corporate victim revenue, a slight shift from the under 10 million or under 50 million. So it's still about 57%, but in the previous quarter, it was about 65, I think it was, or 66% of all ransomware was targeted at those smaller organizations that tend to have less resources for security and backup. But what we've seen is an increase when you get up into the 1 billion and the over 500 million size organizations. They seem to be targeting them a little more often. But as was mentioned earlier as well, the big increase we've seen in victim industries, transportation, and healthcare. And healthcare is a big concern for all of us. You know, there's a lot of PII that they can get, as well as you lock up a hospital, you jeopardize a lot of people's lives, not just getting money out of it. BEC, business email compromise. We were talking about that a little earlier as well. One big factor is free email organizations. So free email attacks, 73% of business email compromises were launched from a free webmail address. Gift cards continue to be the most popular cash out method. Google Play gift cards is the most popular. And the graph here just kind of shows you where those free webmail accounts tend to land. Obviously, Microsoft and Gmail right at the top of the list. And then going on, malware delivery. So this graph kind of shows you some of the main malware categories that we're seeing out there. But one of the things we've seen is malware delivery is actually kind of dropped. The industry is very good at blocking malware from landing in somebody's inbox within the enterprise. Not so much for phishing. 95% of threats were credential theft and response-based attacks. So all based on phishing. They phish, they get the credentials, then they go in and drop their malware. And yes, social media. This is the big threat factor we're seeing now. A 47% increase Q1 over Q2. And here you'll see most of it is fraud. And here we go. Oh, yes, our e-crime event. So this is our upcoming event. This will be our 17th, I believe it is, for our electronic crime research program. The research papers are being reviewed now. We should be announcing them in another week or so. We will be announcing the call for sessions the first of next week. And this is where our members and other organizations can propose sessions to fill in the agenda around the center of the event, which is the published papers, the published research. And I hope to see you there. This will be a hybrid event, so it will be available online for everyone to register and attend, but we'll have a small contingency on site for those that want to do some real networking now that we're finally able to get out of the basement. And thank you very much. If you'd like to get involved with APWG, drop me an email or to membership@apwg.org, and one of us will get back to you as quickly as possible. And thank you to ENISA for hosting this event, and thank you for tuning in. Zoriana?
Yeah, thank you very much, Corey. Yeah, thank you for all for the presentations. And right now, I would like to change to our another part, our discussion. And I would like to mention and remind you to send your questions in the chat box. And in the role of moderator, I would like to warm up the audience. And I would like to ask some questions for instance, for Evgenia. You mentioned that multi-factor authentication actually has reduced the opportunity for attackers. So, but I don't know if you have observed that, but a lot of people saying, it is too difficult for me to have two-factor authentication. It's time-consuming. It's inconvenient because even you receive from your bank. So please do multi-factor authentication. What you tell to that end users if they tell it this?
Okay, I will be very strict on this. It's either you go the multi-factor authentication way, or you risk it, you don't use it, and you might be seeing your, let's say, your bank account being emptied if you don't use it. So yes, I know in some cases it can be a little bit time consuming, but think of the alternative. Use multi-factor authentication, not just for your bank accounts, but for your social accounts, for your personal email address, for your business email address. Anything you can use multi-factor authentication, use it. Now, it's not that inconvenient, let's say, because we do have those random generators. Google has it, Azure has it, just to name a few that I am using. You can put your mobile as well, okay, to have the SMS being sent with the random PIN, okay, let's call it. There are multiple ways to use multi-factor authentication, so use it.
Noted. Thank you very much. Well, Eleni, also you have mentioned that the human factor is really a top cause of different breaches. And so what would you recommend to the companies to watch against the human errors, human mistakes?
Well, there are many controls that one can take to defend against or to prepare for any phishing incident. Of course, it's quite important that we have mentioned before, training and awareness. I mean, first and foremost, you need to be able to identify, for example, to be able to understand that you have been possibly a victim of a phishing campaign. So this is important, to be able to see, to understand, and to be suspicious about the message you will receive, the call you will receive, about anything. And do not open, of course, if you are in doubt. Now, on the other side, companies, it's not just about training and awareness of people, of personnel. It's also about taking the necessary defensive measures and controls. I mean, technical measures. So, as we said, okay, multi-factor authentication or other kind of technical controls are really important. So, even though phishing is, I mean, the human factor is the weakest link, let's say, in the case of phishing, still there are other controls that companies need to adopt in order to be on the safe side, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we have some questions as well entered here. So there's a question from Jeff. I believe it's for Eugenia. For QR codes, does that mean QR code should bear some unique features like brand logos?
Okay, I would say that even those can be forged. So no, but when the only tip or advice I can give for the QR codes is only scan them if you trust the site, if you trust the person that gives it. So restaurant, I have seen it also, you know, they give you as a menu a QR code to scan. Or the bank that is using QR codes in order to verify payments. So if and when you see that this is a trusted identity, then you can scan the QR codes. Else, I would avoid them because there is no easy way. Actually, I don't know if there is a way to actually see if there is a malicious QR code or not. If you saw in my presentation, I had the QR code. It was a real QR code that I created myself. Okay, it's not a malicious one. Okay, but you see that this was a real. If you scan it, it will take you somewhere, and it basically anybody can do it. Anybody can create a QR code. So avoid them if you can.
Thank you. Yeah, so another question we have from Brian. Do you recommend FIDO 2? And if so, in what scenarios? So I don't know if someone wants to take this question.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? We didn't quite get it.
Do you recommend, also I will send you, yeah. Do you recommend FIDO 2? And if so, in what scenarios?
I can start answering this unless somebody else wants to take it. So if it's implemented in your cooperation, then I think it's a good means of authentication. I personally have not seen it that much in action. It's not quite common yet. Maybe it will become more common. So in these cases, if it has not been incorporated in your business environment, in social media for sure it has not been incorporated, we would know, we would get those notifications like use this, use this, use this. Then yes, by all means start using it. Else, multi-factor is an option as well. I mean, still, it does the same thing, let's say, as a good door in your house or an alarm system. It prevents 90% of potential attacks at least. So it's a good thing. You have at least prevented the 90%. The additional 10, you can be careful and not be the victim.
I think as well, I would say, second that. I mean, I think it's a great program. I think it's got a great future. But until it has been adopted on a much larger scale, it's going to give you limited protection. You know, within an organization, if you want to standardize on the FIDO2, that's great. The program we've worked with these organizations, this is a great way to go. But generally speaking, you're going to need to rely on something right now that's a little more prevalent. And MF2 is definitely the way to go right now. Going forward, once it's better implemented, yes, the hardware is the way to go.
Thank you very much. So let's take another question from Emmanuel. So you mentioned training, and double, triple, quadruple check as a recommendation to reduce phishing. Is it reasonable to expect that people will triple check all the emails? Yeah, so people are already stressed and overloaded. All training don't seem to have the same efficiency in reducing phishing. Could you precise which kind of training you recommend? So basically there are two questions.
Obviously, yeah, training and user awareness, we have to drill it. What we've seen, I know from some of our members that focus on the awareness area, is one of the keys is repetitiveness. Not too much at one time, give them a little, here's a point, and then reiterate that over time repeatedly, so that it's constantly in the back of their mind that we need to be aware that there could be malicious emails in our inbox. There could be a new friend request that looks like somebody we know, but it's really not. I know just last week, I received 3 friend requests from people I was already friends with. And immediately, since I do this all day, I get suspicious, I go look, and we get them shut down. The average person, if they're not aware of it, you can create a clone account that looks just like your friends by downloading a few videos or a few images and making a new account. They may think, oh, well, you know, maybe they set up a new account. Oh, yeah, we're friends. Or they're like some of the people I know that have thousands of friends. You may never even know that this person's already on your list and end up selecting them again. And then you can get infected or frauded. So the big key there is repetitive little lessons over time so that it sticks.
Just
okay, sorry.
no,
To
Eleni,
complement,
go.
what Foy mentioned right now. Okay, training, of course, it's very important. However, I think if companies try to apply more practical ways, I mean, not just sit in a room and give you some training, but also, for example, have practical exercises or campaigns and try to lure your employees, for example, with, for example, what Iphigenia showed us previously, a QR code, how they would react. If you send them a phishing email, how they would react. Give them this kind of interaction, make them fall victim, let's say, of this kind of phishing. And I think this is the best way that an individual will be more conscious and be alert next time he will receive an email or an SMS or whatever.
Can I also add one point to this? Yes, as we mentioned, and I second what both Eleni and Foy said, training is essential in all things, but it's not the only thing. We also need the defenses. We also need the technical things. Because without that, we cannot just count on the users to be aware. Because if the threat actors wants us to click, we are going to click. They are going to find ways to pressure us into clicking through a spear phishing attack, which is highly targeted, highly sophisticated, and highly tailored to us. So also, it's also again the same example as I said. Training and the defenses prevents at least 95% of the incidents, of the attacks, the campaigns. The other 5, which is the most sophisticated, the more targeted, yeah. But at least we have prevented 95%, which is a very big percentage.
Yeah, share completely with you, Evgenia, because it seems like 10 years ago, we need to work on awareness. But right now, also, people are already aware mostly. And we have to more work on the ground on training them. Yeah. So let's jump into another question from Francesco Carola. Most issues could be avoided by implementing protocols like CPF, DGIM, and mailing DMOC. In your opinion, why aren't those protocols very popular in organizations yet? And is there any guidelines provided by ENISA to suggest the implementation? So basically, the first question, are those protocols very popular in organizations? Why they are not so popular in organizations?
I would say one of the factors that prevent rollout is when you get to your small to medium business environment, they just don't have the resources to implement these type of technologies. Now, in your larger organizations, most of them are already taking the jump because it works. They will prevent a lot of the fraud and the malicious attacks against your organization. But generally speaking, a lot of organizations just don't have the talent to put these out there. We recommend and use all of those acronyms you have listed, but a lot of companies just don't have it to do. And it's unfortunate, but as we progress, the technologies become easier to adopt, and hopefully they will be more prevalent going forward.
If I may add on the ENISA part, at least, is that, okay, we cannot provide such a technical guideline because each organization has its own particularities, its own complexity. So if ENISA tries to share, tries to go and gives guidelines pertaining to certain technical protocols, authentication protocols for your mail services, then, well, it's not a fit for all in the end. We can do the recommendations and tell you, yes, you need to authenticate your email servers and put spam filtering and all of the other recommendations, but we cannot say how. The how is depends on the environment, as I said, complexity of each organization. We can give some baseline security guidelines, but again, they're guidelines. We cannot enforce them. We cannot go beyond that level.
Any other comments? Okay, so also I would like to ask you, what do you recommend from ENISA? Well, we have like our from APWG, we have our report, and also the where you can send your phishing attacks, phishing emails. But from ENISA side, so how do you report phishing attacks? What you can recommend on the enterprise level and end user level?
Well, if I can take this question, on enterprise level, I would say that as with any incident reporting, you should follow the incident reporting process. Report it to your national cybersecurity authority, depending on in the sector that you're operating on, and based on the NIS directive. You should report it to the NCSC of your country. Now, if we're talking about on an individual basis, I would say that, of course, reporting to the law enforcement authorities, the law enforcement agencies is important. But also, depending on the case, if this phishing has to do, for example, with your bank account. We encourage people to contact the bank or whatever it is. It's the telecom communications provider. You should report this, and of course, make sure that you change any password that has been compromised. Probably change your username. And as I said, report the incident to the relevant authorities, so that you help prevent the fraudulent use of your data. And of course, I would say also share this experience with your friends. This is also important. I mean, share it with your community is important so that everyone is aware and safe.
Well, for any thoughts from your side? What organization should we contact? Well, if there is a phishing attack, and where you are on mute. You are on mute.
You're mute.
Mute.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're a victim, if you received a phishing email or you get a phishing email that you didn't click on, always forward those to report phishing at APWG.org, where we can put them in our repository. Our members will research them and use them. In the US, I generally recommend you report attacks to the IC3, the Internet Cybercrime Complaint Center that the FBI host, IC3.org, I believe is the URL. Report to your bank what's happened, so they know if you have attacks, and generally law enforcement in your particular country. The big problem with reporting is the volume. Most law enforcement agencies do not have the resources to follow up like it should unless it's a huge attack. So unfortunately, that is always going to be an issue. But hopefully, we're still fighting policies and trying to make things easier in that area. One of the things we always run into is, so you report something, we get involved to research and try to take down a malicious site. That process takes time. So that's where organizations like ourselves and a lot of your security industry focuses on sharing the bad site so we can block the user from getting to it. And if you don't report that to, your security organization or law enforcement, we can't start blocking them until we can actually get them taken down, because that process just takes time.
Thank you. And so here we have another question from Kayoko. Once the company pays ransom, will the attacker threat the same company repeatedly? If you know this kind of cases, could you share for me?
You can go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quickly that I have not heard a lot about repeat attacks. Generally, a lot of the larger ransomware criminal infrastructures are pretty good about providing the decrypt and giving you your data back, because it's in their best interest as a professional criminal, I guess, to do so. I know, but it is kind of the case here. I have not heard of any incidences of them repeatedly hitting one account just because, hey, they paid, let's do it again. Because if you hit me again, I'm probably not going to pay you the second time because I've already given you my money and you did it again. But outside of that, they tend to, if you pay, they'll give you your code and they usually go away.
I will have to disagree with this. I know, I don't recall which one is it. I can try to actually find it, because they were hit between 12 months, in the time period of 12 months, twice. And it all comes down to cyber insurance, I would say. They pay because they are cyber insured. And then, okay, why not? They're threat actors. Why not? If they have not done things to patch all of these things, why should they not go twice to the same victim? They probably will get the money again a second time. So I think this is becoming, let's say, a sort of a pattern to go twice to people that paid. This is why we ENISA's list and AC3 promote the no more ransom campaigns. We say, and we generally recommend to not pay the ransom because actually it gives motivation to the threat actors to attack a second time and the third and the fourth and so on. I mean, you get the picture. And I also, it was quite recent that I saw that it was a company got hit at the second time. And I was like, oh my God, were those hit by a second time last year? But I have completely forgotten who it was.
Yeah, we had one last year where a different criminal organization attacked someone who had paid. But I haven't heard any of one group hitting the same people over and over again. But I mean, yeah, if they got insurance, don't advertise you got insurance. I'd say.
Yeah, thank you from Kayoko for the question, for the answers. Yeah, so, and you have mentioned that you have seen, well, very quadruple phishing attacks this year, but in what spheres, what spheres of activity there were more phishing attacks this year? Have you noticed any specific sphere there are more phishing attacks?
One of the things I've seen, a lot of the phishing attacks are becoming maybe a little more generic in that, I see a lot coming through where it's, uh, you know, um, this solution for diabetes, or get involved in this legal campaign against poisoned water, or um, general interest levels. Products like, leaf guard to put on your house, these things that, oh, that looks interesting, and you may follow it not thinking it's an attack. Lots of surveys, oh, you went to Walmart. Well, who in the US didn't go to Walmart in the last week? Fill out this survey on your visit and get a gift card. A lot of that type of attack coming in where it's a little less than, it's a PayPal, or it's a Bank of America, or a Caixa Bank, or, the big names we know. It's a little more under the radar. And people follow it thinking, oh yeah, I need a Walmart coupon because I go there 3 times a week. And boom, now their data's gone.
Yeah, any comments from Melanie of Kenya on there? Maybe you have seen any examples of activity?
Yeah, well, on a more general basis, I would say that, okay, of course, as we said, the threat actors are usually after the news, let's say, what is going on right now. So if it's the pandemic, if it's the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I mean, they are taking advantage of whatever is happening in order to lure their victims. So I would say, okay, the health sector has been quite affected the last couple of years with phishing, attacks. And of course, I think what is all-time classic is the banking sector with the banks and the finance sector. We always see that happening many years now. So.
I also want to share my favorite one, which I really hope nobody fell victim, but it was such atrocious that really I could not believe it. When the pandemic started, there was a lure used as a means of protection against COVID to download an antivirus. this, I think, has been one of the top that I have seen. Yes.
One other I just thought of when she was saying that is seen an increase in attacks, generally attacking your email, trying to compromise your email account with these. It will look like it's from an admin. You know, your password's expired. You need to renew it. Click here. Do you want to keep your existing password? Click here. And so then you give them your existing password, and now they're off to the races. So be very wary of that. Seen them. Many different ones from, you know, wire or transfer sites. You know, somebody sent you a file, click here to download it. So a lot of that I've seen a big uptake this year.
And also, let's not forget from the backside, our prince that is always asking for money. And he's stranded somewhere and he's asking for our help. And he will give us, I don't know how much, money in order to help him, and so on and so on.
Unless Prince, I don't know, how long have you been so famous? For more than 15 years or something like that. It's like, wow. And
it depends on the country. I have seen, you know, from various destinations.
Oh my God. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think we have 4 minutes, and I think it's time for us to close out. I'd like to ask our panelists, do you have something to share, or you were thinking about that you'd like to comment on the topic? So please use this if you would like to use this time. Yeah. And thank you very much for the participation, and thank you all the panelists, the speakers. And if you don't have anything, our speakers, so I close the session.
If I can add something to close up, I would like to share the motto that we have at ENISA as we are running also the European Cybersecurity Month. I would like to finish with the motto, think before you click.
Yes.
So that's what I have to share.
Yeah,
Always,
we use
always.
stop, think, connect, and we use stop, think, connect.
Yeah. The more urgent the need, the longer you should take to think about it before you click on it. And use multi-factor authentication, and use different passwords for every site, particularly if it involves money. If it's a bank, do not use the same password everywhere. Be smart, please.
Or a password safe as well.
Yes, yes. You know, if you find one you trust and use it, they work.
Thank you very much for the insightful and helpful information today. And thank you very much, our participants, for your participation. I hope you have enjoyed our session today. Today we have discussed the cybersecurity overall, and precisely phishing-related cyber crimes that we have observed in 2022, and resulting from the unfortunate outbreak of the war in Ukraine and the pandemic. So see you next time, and thank you very much again for the participation of our panelists.
Thank you all.
Thank you
It was
all.
a pleasure.
Ciao.
Have a nice night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.